right. Do I see Brendan Lee Gowton's smiling face with us? He's good enough to hop on board with us now for a couple minutes. Thanks for getting up, BLG.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. I like to bust your chops. BLG, you and I text over the weekend, didn't get into detail about how much Jordan Mailata being out of the Eagle lineup hurts them coming into tonight's game. Got hurt in practice last Thursday. How much faith do you have in Andre Dillard stepping in that he will be able to keep the Eagles quarterback from getting killed?
I don't have a lot of faith. You look at what we've seen from Andre Dillard early on, and, I'm going back a couple of years here, but in his rookie season, he did not play very well. He actually allowed the highest pressure rate of any offensive tackle in 2019. He also had the highest blown block rate. And then in the 2 summers I've seen him since in training camp, he hasn't looked good. He's really struggled. I did a poll with Jimmy Kempski here from PhillyVoice.com of our best and worst players at training camp each day. And Andre Dillard at the end of the training camp came out as the very worst player. I think he really struggled. He gets beat in a way that I have not seen players really get beat before in a practice where they just get thrown to the ground. Maybe like a UDFA body's getting pushed around like that, if anything, but I just don't see it. And I know people were like, oh, well, he looked good against the Jets in the final preseason game. Those are the Jets' third stringers. He should be looking good against them. And it's a small sample size. So I don't feel amazing about Dillard. The point of optimism that the Eagles are probably going to give him extra help. And the Cowboys don't have the most full defensive line right now. They're kind of depleted there.
We expect Micah Parsons to be on Andre Dillard all night, right?
I would throw everything. If I'm the Cowboys, I would throw everything at Andre Dillard. That's the game plan, is to attack him repeatedly over and over until he proves that he can hold up there. And Parsons, had an impressive debut last week. I think he had something like 7 pressures, despite moving from linebacker to edge rusher and not having a lot of time to do that. So, absolutely.
Now, we thought, again, prior to Mailata's injury on Friday, that our biggest concern on the offensive line was going to be Landon Dickinson, filling in for Brandon Brooks, at least as per Pro Football Focus's grading. He had a really tough debut, a lot of missed protections, and Jalen Hurts was either getting hit or running for his life in the background. He should be better for week 2 just because he's got this full week of practice. His first full week of practice as a starter, right, BLG?
Yeah, I think that's significant. Having that full week to prepare, not having to be thrown into the fire, your first NFL game after only practicing for 1 week fully. Now, at the same time here, he's a rookie. There's going to be some growing pains, and he's also a guy coming off a December 2020 ACL injury. So I kind of wonder, where he is health-wise in terms of getting back and conditioning and all that. So, I don't expect a flawless performance by any means, but I do think it's reasonable for him to look significantly better than he did coming in against the 49ers last week.
I was talking to Brian Westbrook last week, PLG, and he was saying Miles Sanders, there's no reason he should not get 20 and 25 touches a game. He's that special of a player. How come the Eagles aren't actually doing that with him?
I think part of it is just the role. When you look at like week 1, for example, and you see Kenny Gainwell in there, the Eagles trusting him as their 2-minute back. That's part of it. Like when you're not able to really thrive in the passing game, like Miles Sanders wasn't able to, admittedly so, in 2020, and then didn't have the best training camp in that regard in terms of catching the ball. That's going to limit your playing time and your role overall. So I think Miles Sanders kind of needs to continue to demonstrate he can actually, catch the ball and be effective in that area, and obviously excel in pass protection, to which his credit, he did. He had a really good block in the Atlanta game that led to a Jalen Hurts touchdown or big play, I believe. So, he's going to have to do that to really get to that 20 kind of carry. And even then, I don't know that this organization really wants to have their running backs do that. I don't think that's like an MO that they really believe in terms of riding one running back that heavily.
Well, I hope that that's not the case. If the guy deserves to get the ball 25 times a game, he should get it 25 times a game. They shouldn't let MO decide who gets how many touches. The only thing that should decide that is what gives you the best chance to win on any given week. Let me get your take on this, because Jeff and I just discussed it before you came on. If you're looking at the strengths and weaknesses of each team dealing with injuries and like coming into tonight's game, it seems to point to the Eagles' game plan being, let's get the ball out of Jalen Hurts' hands real quick. Let's get those bubble screens. Let's get those quick slants. Let's work the outside of the field, which, oh, by the way, Nick Sirianni took a lot of criticism for this week because they never went anywhere near the middle of the field. But it's probably the smart way to go again this week against the Cowboys with where these two teams are at. Agree or disagree?
I agree from a standpoint of I was talking to, some Cowboys fans, and their biggest concern is their quarterback position. So it's another week to attack this team through the air. Now, I think the Eagles got a little too aggressive in terms of attacking the 49ers last week. It was kind of like all or nothing. You saw that week 1 performance where you're talking about getting the ball out of Jalen Hurts' hands quick there, Jody. I mean, we saw that again against Atlanta, but then it kind of went the opposite way against San Francisco, where the Eagles are just airing it out a lot, and that's nice to see and it's fun to see. But I think it was a little too aggressive overall. I mean, you don't want to be ending the week. I think 1 week, the least average intended air yards like Hurts had after week 1 to the most after week 2. I think that's just kind of I think there's some happy medium to be found there, and I think you can kind of do that against the Cowboys. I would definitely look to pass against this team. I mean, you have to pick your spots when you're getting deep, and you have to actually hit them because it's a big deal. Unlike leaving those plays on the field against the 49ers. But yeah, I'd absolutely look to attack this secondary. It's vulnerable. It's also time, like you said, to get the tight ends involved. I mean, Dallas Goedert hasn't been involved enough. Zach Ertz only has 40 yards through 2 games, and that's not good enough. So it's time to work the middle of the field. It's time for Jalen Hurts to step up in a big game.
Speaking of Jalen Hurts, he has 144 rushing yards for 2 games. Are you concerned that he's running too much?
I think there is some of that. I wouldn't say like all of that is from there or most of that's necessarily from there, but I think there is some deficiency with the arm in terms of, and that's being like is compensating with his legs. I think in general, more often than not, he's done a good job of picking his spots and knowing when to run and not taking off too soon. But I just, you don't always want to see the quarterback rely on that as a crutch because, honestly, I think the defense is okay with that. Like, I think the 49ers, to an extent, were okay with him running like he was as long as it wasn't going to beat him over the top with the big play. So I think, it's kind of a fine line. There's risk-reward there. I would like to see him, hit those big plays. I mean, that's the big thing for me coming out of the 49ers game. You can't leave those on the field. You have to hit Devontae when he's deep down the field. You can't underthrow him.
And a key would be if he does go deep down the sideline, to the wide receivers, please don't step out of bounds because I can take points off the board. I said this way back last Monday, BLG, or maybe it's Tuesday because it was Monday because someone questioned it on my CBS show on Sunday night. Jalen Hurts running too much. I went back and broke down his 9 runs. I was okay with him running every single one of them. There wasn't one player where I said, damn, he didn't even give the route a chance, that he just pulled it back down and took off. No, he looked every single time. It wasn't there. He turned it upfield. He made a big play. That's just good football. If you have a quarterback that could do that, I want him to do that. I leave it up to the rest. And now you and I aren't watching coaching tapes, so we don't see the guy who is wide open and maybe the third progression that he could have gone to. But it seemed to me, just judging off television, that he didn't rush anything to get out of the pocket and turn the ball upfield and make the plays with his legs. I thought they were all well decided and good football IQ plays by the quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, he hasn't really been breaking the pocket too early. He did that like a time or two against Atlanta, here and there maybe. But at the end of the day, too, you look at the numbers in terms of him holding onto the ball, he does do that. And I think that kind of manifests himself sometimes in the running where, like you're saying there, Jody, he's not seeing anything, so then he's running. But, I mean, sometimes I feel like he has to throw it. He has to see it. He has to throw with anticipation a little bit more. At least that was one of my criticisms about him coming out of training camp, was he was just kind of holding onto the ball a little bit too long. And you're not always going to have someone open. Sometimes you have to throw people open. And look, he had a really nice tight window throw down to Dallas Goedert for the Eagles' first and only touchdown against the 49ers last week. So it's not something he can't do. But when we're talking about him needing to throw over the middle of the field and be a little bit more aggressive in that regard, I mean, that's something we just definitely need to see.
Jalen Reagor is a player that I think he's a little better than he was last year. I ain't saying much, but I know you got hammered for the step out of bounds, which I thought was really fair criticism of him. What are your thoughts on Reagor through 2 games?
Yeah, I mean, I never bought into Jalen Mager had this amazing training camp and he totally turned the corner just because he made a one-handed catch in one-on-ones. He actually made one-handed catches. Were really nice and kind of shows his talent, but it doesn't mean he's a good football player. And I really think that with Jalen Reagor, we're kind of experiencing a similar kind of frustration level to Nelson Aguilar. And there's part of that is like, this guy has talent, so he should be performing better and you should see more consistency. But I feel like Reagor with Aguilar, you're never going to get that clean performance where it's just like, all right, he's having a good day and nothing is wrong. By, like, for example, like Quez Watkins last week, really good catch for the 91-yarder, and then he had the other 27 or 26-yarder or so, and then that's a great day for him. And with Jalen Reagor, it's never that simple. There's always going to be this other shoe to drop. I feel like he's always going to frustrate, and I think that's his reputation right now until he proves otherwise. It's really frustrating. I think he's playing too much, honestly. Yeah, because Watkins only played 50% of the Eagles snaps last week. That's not high enough for me. I think he's the second best receiver on the team, not Jalen Reagor. So I'd like to see Jalen Reagor's playing time decrease a little bit, or at the very least, Quez Watkins go up.
BLG, we'd all love to just be able to figure out how you replace Brandon Graham. Plug something in, and then everything else stays the same. That's just not the way it's going to happen. It's going to be a combination of factors that the defensive coordinator is going to have to come up with. Williams going outside a little bit, flip-flopping your two left defensive ends, one over to the right, somebody getting extra snaps. Give us the best guess speculation, knowing full well the next week may be completely different, that they might go at it differently. But heading into the game tonight against the Cowboys, who's going to get most of Brandon Graham's snaps at defensive end?
Yeah, I don't think they're going to really super deepen the rotation. I don't think you're going to see, Teron Jackson suddenly take on a much, much bigger role because he's kind of struggled, for example. I think it's kind of just putting more on the plate of the top three guys in terms of Derek Barnett and Josh Sweat and Ryan Kerrigan. And then, maybe you throw Milton Williams out there a little bit more too. I think it's kind of, those are the top four now. But when it comes to replacing Brandon Graham, I think, there has been a lot of talk, rightfully so, who's going to play defensive end in his spot. But when it comes to players stepping up, to me, no one needs to step up more than Fletcher Cox. And I know they don't play the same position, but when Brandon Graham goes down and he's a leader not only on the field but off of it as well. It's Fletcher Cox has the highest cap hit on the team, and he has one sack and one quarterback hit in the Eagles' last 6 games. Now, obviously he draws extra attention, double teams and all that, but you got to produce. If you're getting paid elite money, you have to produce. And I think Cox needs to really step up here, and starting with tonight, having a big kind of monster game. And I think that's how you're going to replace some of Brandon Graham's his lost impact there, is Fletcher Cox really stepping up.
This isn't a game we're going to be writing about tomorrow where CeeDee Lamb or Amari Cooper's on Darius Slay and Steven Nelson. We're defending Darius Slay for allowing 9 catches for 140 yards again, is it?
I mean, it shouldn't be. I mean, you're paying kind of what I was saying about there with Fletcher Cox. The Eagles are paying Darius Slay elite cornerback money. Having a good game isn't really good enough. You're paying this guy to be a shutdown corner. Honestly, for a guy who's nicknamed Big Play Slay, he has 1 interception with the Eagles. Obviously, came in Week 16 last year against the Cowboys. It'd be a nice time for him to have another one of those or 2. It's nice to keep the other wide receivers quiet. I get that, but you also need to turn the ball over and force takeaways, and the Eagles have 0 of those so far this year, and maybe some of that's just bad luck with Anthony Harris kind of dropping a pick last week and the Darius Slay fumble recovery getting wiped out by that Kayvon Wallace penalty. But it's time. It's time to force some turnovers, and I feel like you have to look to Darius Slay, if he's going to be Big Play Slay, to really get that done.
Kayvon Wallace did draw the penalty, but the penalty actually could have been on the forearm prior to. Kayvon Wallace needs to play a big game again tonight. No Rodney McLeod. Yeah, Marcus Epps is going to get some time. I think they'll both split those safety times. Safety position against this Cowboy team that's going to throw the ball a lot, including with Tony Pollard out of the backfield, is got the potential to swing the balance of the power of the game. How much faith do you have in Wallace and Epps manning that other safety spot across from Harris tonight?
Well, I think this is certainly their biggest test. It's one thing to face Matt Ryan. It's another thing to face Jimmy G, who left a lot of plays on the field, not only last night against the Packers, but also against the Eagles last weekend. So this is their biggest test yet. And I think Wallace hasn't been totally exposed yet, in part because the competition hasn't been as amazing, in part because I think the Eagles scheme helps him. But he's missed some tackles, and I think he's going to be tested more in coverage than he has been thus far. So really big bell for him to answer tonight against the Cowboys. That offense is not a joke when you look at the weapons that they have there, even though they might be banged up in certain spots. And obviously, Dak is easily the best quarterback they've faced so far, or going to have faced so far this year. So I think it's a really big test. I think Wallace has had some issues. He has not really taken that step that you really want to see. Again, not necessarily saying he's been terrible, but he's not made any kind of big leap to a promising second-year player. And this would be a good chance for him to kind of turn that around.
Your two games. Top 5 in points allowed, top 5 in yards allowed. I know it's early. I know the offenses haven't been world beaters, but how would you grade the Eagles defense as a whole?
I think it's pretty good. I guess I'm going with like a B plus, A minus. The thing that gets me is like, where are the big impact plays? Again, maybe it's kind of just a bad luck thing, like dropping that pick, like I said, or maybe the turnovers are going to come here in bunches, but like, you have 0 turnovers, takeaways. I mean, through 2 weeks, like that's not great. And then I know they've been limiting the big play, which is important, and I think that's really good. But like, where are the sacks too? I mean, they have 3 sacks, I believe. What total? 3 or 4, and all of those came on the last 3 drives against the Falcons, where the game was kind of in hand and things were running away. Like, give me a sack early in the game that kind of sets the tone, or comes at a critical, 3rd down and gets you a stop. Like, we haven't seen these kind of big impact splash plays. Maybe that's something you kind of have to live with in terms of the defense isn't going to give them up, but you're not going to get them. But I don't know, man. And you're paying a lot of money to Fletcher Cox, a lot of money to Darius Slay to not have big plays made by the defense. So I think the defense is kind of solid and sound, but you're going to have to come up with these takeaways to help out the offense, give them some extra possessions, some short fields, especially tonight. I don't think the Eagles are winning this game if they come out of another game here with 0 takeaways.
And a guy who is not getting paid that monster money like Fletcher Cox and Javon Hargrave is Alex Singleton, who has become their biggest playmaking linebacker. He gets to the ball. He is a short tackler, but he hasn't been able to come up with that huge turnover, tip pass, forced fumble type play yet. Tonight would be a nice night for him to kick it in, right? If you're gonna, Alex, you've already won us over as a starting linebacker, a guy that Eagle fans can get behind. A big play would be a nice addition tonight for Mr. Singleton, right?
I mean, you wouldn't hate to see that, I feel like. I think the linebackers have been kind of inconsistent here. Obviously, the tackling, I think Eric Wilson had something like 4 missed tackles in week 1. And then I believe Alex Singleton actually had 5 last week against the 49ers, and some coverage issues there. So, these Eagles linebackers still are not by any means, strength of the team. I imagine they're an area that the Cowboys are going to look to expose, and it's a big challenge going up against Zeke, who is obviously a physical presence, and I certainly think isn't the player he once was, but you still have to tackle him. He's not the easiest guy to tackle. And then Tony Pollard, who the Cowboys seem to be realizing is a weapon that deserves more playing time because he's more efficient than Zeke is with his touches. So it's a big matchup for the linebackers as well. I mean, those we all put the attention on CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper, but those running backs can do some damage.
We know what they got coming in the next 4 games, BLG. If the Eagles win tonight, do you like their chances in the NFC East?
Yeah, I think they have to get to a point by midseason or so because they have this tough schedule coming up. They don't have to be amazing. They don't have to be above 500. As long as they're kind of like a game or 2 below, they're hanging around. They have the potential to figure things out late in the season, with all those NFC East games stacked up at the end. And also just from the standpoint of it's Jalen Hurts in the 2nd year. It's Nick Sirianni in his 1st year. These guys are learning on the job. If those guys can kind of figure things out and they're getting better by the end of the year and the team is gelling, I think there's a chance for them to make a run late in the season. So yeah, win here would be huge because you take first in the NFC East for now. You bank that win. You're 2-1. You knock the Cowboys down to 1-2, and then you're going to have a tough stretch here. I mean, the Chiefs are going to be very hungry for a win, being at the bottom of the AFC West, dropping down to 1-2. So, and then the Panthers undefeated, obviously. You got the Bucs coming to town on Thursday Night Football. So yeah, it's a tough stretch. To get a win here would be really nice before you potentially go on a losing streak or a tough streak here. So it'd be a big deal.
BLG, we won't find out till right before the game starts who the Eagles inactives are going to be. Boston Scott has not been inactive either of the first 2 weeks. He's played special teams. He hasn't played from the line of scrimmage, hasn't touched the ball yet, but he has been in the Eagle lineup. And that's a question mark tonight. He hasn't practiced the last couple of days. Don't know if he's going to be up to going. I guess I should be more worried about who's going to pick up his slack on special teams since he actually does play there. But I'm also worried about the running back position because you're one good hit away from having either Miles Sanders or Kenny Gainwell to go down. If he's capable of playing, I guess then he plays. If he's not, how are the Eagles going to replace him on special teams, and what does happen in the backfield? Will they just go with 2 guys?
Yeah, it's a really good question because, like you said, I mean, he hasn't had a big role this far. He hasn't yet played an offensive snap, but when you only have 2 running backs on the roster above him, I mean, like you said, Miles Sanders or Kenny Gainwell get banged up, and that's entirely possible at a position that gets hurt a lot, running backs. It's kind of concerning. So if I'm not mistaken, I believe that you'll still have some time to announce practice squad elevations because they play on Monday. They might be able to bump up Jordan Howard if they really want to, if Boston Scott can't play, if it's looking like that. So they still have some time, if I'm not mistaken, to kind of, adjust there, and maybe they'll do that. We'll see. Also, Boston Scott only missing practice with an illness. We haven't seen him placed on the COVID list, so we would assume that it's not COVID, but, we don't know for sure. We're kind of speculating there. We'll see. I don't know about special teams as much. One guy I want to shout out, but while we're talking about special teams, is that new safety / defensive back the Eagles got from the Colts, Andre Dillard. I mean, he's been really good. He's been down on punt coverage like every time the first time, so that's a good pickup by the pro personnel department. I mean, I guess he's going to have to keep doing his thing to really make this count. It's not like Boston Scott is returning anymore, so you don't have to worry about that as much. But yeah, it's one of those injuries that might not matter much if Sanders and Gainwell stay healthy and have a good game. But all of a sudden, you're one injury away from it being a bigger deal.
Josh Sweat, I think he only ended up with, you probably have a more accurate number here, but it was only 52% of the snaps last week. Now that they paid him, doesn't he have to play more?
Yeah, I mean, and here's the thing, a lot of people were talking about last week. Well, there's a reason because, they have a specific role designed for Ryan Kerrigan. I mean, isn't this the coaching staff that everyone loves because they just play the best players? It's about players. It's not about scheme. I mean, you can't say that and then have Ryan Kerrigan playing more than Josh Sweat. That's just not okay. And to Nick Sirianni's credit, he admitted after the Eagles lost to the 49ers that Sweat's number needs to get back up. That was too low. So that's good to see. But, I mean, let's see it in the results, too. I mean, you can't give Josh Sweat a $13.3 million a year deal and then have him playing behind Ryan Kerrigan. That just does not make any sense. Josh Sweat was one of your best players in training camp. He is one of the best young players in terms of promising talent on the team. He needs to be playing. And, again, with Brandon Graham out, he needs to really step up here. I mean, he's a guy who's going to have to take on a lot of pressure in terms of being able to produce.
All right, BLG, 2-part question to wrap this up. Number one, sounds like you're leaning toward the Cowboys tonight. Would I be reading between your BLG lines correctly?
I mean, you are. It's not that I necessarily feel amazing about the Cowboys. I just don't really feel super confident right now about the Eagles with the way things are trending, especially with that Jordan Mailata news coming out in practice that kind of cemented it for me. I've seen Andre Dillard really struggle. I can't just give him the benefit of the doubt. He has not earned that. So I think it's going to be a close game. It's going to be a tough game. I think it's going to be a 24-20 win for the Cowboys, unfortunately.
Yeah, you and I see it the same way. I was leaning toward the Eagles until my Mailata injury, and now I'm definitely leaning toward the Cowboys. All right, and away from the Eagles for a millisecond, good news, bad news. Jeff and I discussed this before the show started today. Carson Wentz has played 93% of the snaps for the Colts. That's good news. Bad news is they're 0-3, and they're starting to look like they're going to have a very high draft pick, which if it gets to some point, the ownership is going to come down and tell the coach, listen, know how much you like your old boy here, but we need to save that first-round pick. We're going nowhere fast. We need to take a look at some of our other quarterbacks. Is Carson Wentz actually going to get pulled again for the second consecutive year, BLG?
I mean, if the season ended today, which it doesn't, the Colts will be picking number 3 overall in the 2022 NFL draft. There is zero chance the Colts are letting the Eagles get a pick that high for Carson Wentz. So yeah, there's absolutely a chance he gets benched. I don't think it's going to be, anytime super soon unless it's related to the injury, but we're talking about late in the year and they're trying to get him under that, 75% threshold. That's absolutely going to happen. I can't see it not happening. Although the only thing I'll add is once you do that, the Carson Wentz era in Indy is over. You're not pulling that plug and you're coming back next year and you're working. No, it's done at that point. So that's the cost you're going to have to pay if you do that.
You mean Carson Wentz wouldn't be able to roll with those punches and bounce back and go, all right, I still know it's my team. I'll be ready to go in 2022. You don't see that for Carson Wentz? Yeah.
I mean, that's, yeah, no.
Well, Brent Hunt needs backup. That's all you need to know.
Not good, and it is going to be fun to keep an eye on all year long. BLG, appreciate it, as always. We're going to have you back again. Next time, you better be ready. 8:20, though. Otherwise, you're going to get nasty text from me. Brandon, thanks, buddy. Appreciate it.
I'll be ready. Thanks, guys.
That's our boy, Brandon Lee Gowton from Bleeding Green Nation, giving us some insight for tonight's matchup between the Eagles and the Cowboys. Jeff and I will be back. We'll talk plenty more about it, and we've still got one more guest to come. Good-looking dude, too. The other Mac, John McMullen, will join us coming up about 25 minutes from now here on Birds 365.